Hello and welcome to a bonus episode of Brand New Thought. I'm your host, Razmik Sargsyan, and this conversation is special for two reasons. Number one is my guest, and number two is the topics that we'll discuss today. As we're recording these conversations, horrendous things happen in different parts of the world, in Ukraine, in Artsakh, Nagorno-Karabakh. I think it's obvious that we're dealing with a global crisis. And it's also obvious that the methods that we have used to solve this crisis are not sufficient, which begs the question whether these methods or means go deep enough to address the problem in its source, or perhaps we're actually cleaning up the consequences of the problems. So I hope today's guest is going to help us with that. We are going to talk about transcendental meditation, because transcendental meditation is actually one of the techniques that promises to be such a solution. We will talk about PTSD recovery in Armenia. What a lot of people don't know is that transcendental meditation has been used in Armenia quite massively after the earthquake of 1988 to alleviate the suffering that unfolded after that. And we'll speak about research on transcendental meditation and what it can help us understand about the nature of consciousness. So we'll try to come up with insights that will be helpful both to meditators and to people that do not meditate. And my distinguished guest today is David Shapiro, who is the founding president of the Alliance for PTSD Recovery. Alliance for PTSD Recovery is an educational, charitable, and research organization that both studies and implements treatments for PTSD, including the Transcendental Meditation Program. David, welcome to Brand New Thought. It's an honor to have you here.
Thank you. It's a great honor to be speaking with you. You've really touched on extremely important issues that are dear to our heart. We're here to basically help the individuals create inner peace through proven technologies, scientifically verified technologies, and also to help the nation as a whole reduce war and violence and therefore trauma. So we're here for reducing the trauma and also preventing the trauma for the whole nation and nations. So I'm honored to be able to speak with you, and I look forward to trying to answer your questions.
Why don't you share a little bit about your background and how is it that you came to work with PTSD and through transcendental meditation?
Well, I've been personally practicing transcendental meditation since 1975 when I learned. So I've been practicing it around, 45 years or so, maybe more, 47 years. And it just happened that I'm working with the TM, Transcendental Meditation movement, for quite some time. And at some point, I was actually the national director of the TM movement in two countries in Africa, Democratic Republic of Congo and Gabon. That's Democratic Republic of Congo has over 10 million people have been killed in the warring area, warring there in the last 20 years. So it's a huge area of trauma. And in fact, many people have fled the country. And I was asked to do a study on post-traumatic stress disorder to see if transcendental meditation would be a useful technique for reducing or helping reduce post-traumatic stress disorder. So we worked with some top scientists, and we found Congolese war refugees in Uganda who had very high levels of symptoms. We designed a very careful pilot study on, we had 40 people. We randomly assigned half of them to the control group, the waste-listed group who didn't learn TM, and the other half learned TM. And in that study, we thought, well, let's see how it helps. We're just very neutral. And to our complete amazement, the non-TM group showed zero change at all. They were in the grips of high levels of PTSD symptoms. The TM group, to our total amazement, was out of PTSD in 30 days. Every single one in that group was out of PTSD in 30 days. So we said, okay, let's test them at 135 days and see if that holds. If they continue meditating, are they still, do they maintain that level of symptoms? And the non-TM group still had the high level of PTSD, and it rose a little bit after 4.5 months. And the TM group was even lower in their symptoms. So they were non-symptomatic. They still had some little symptoms, but it wasn't at the level of PTSD, and those symptoms fell more. So then we did another test, and we published that study in the top journal, Journal of Traumatic Stress, which is one of the, maybe the top journal on traumatic stress in the world. Then we tested the control group, who was waitlisted. We tested a small group of them. They became non-symptomatic in 30 days as well. And even we tested to see what happened in 10 days. Very, very great drop in symptoms of PTSD, even in 10 days. So that I formed an organization, and we now have this organization called Alliance for PTSD Recovery, with the sole purpose of helping people come out of PTSD around the world. We also our concern has become to not only bring people out of PTSD, but to reduce the likelihood of a country getting into conflicts. So we prevent PTSD as well. But our first foremost focus has been to reduce the PTSD in people who have PTSD, and we've been to that end, we've been actually reaching out across Armenia in the last 2 years to reduce the trauma with soldiers, veterans, displaced people, and the general public who has PTSD from just being in a country that's at war. So I maybe more than answered your question, but I wanted to relate it as well to Armenia.
I love that answer, and you've addressed on a couple of things that I definitely want to ask more about. But for people that may not be familiar with transcendental meditation, or even meditation to begin with, give us a little short introduction about what it is and what it can give people.
So transcendental meditation is one of millions, thousands and thousands of types of meditation. TM is extremely unique in that it's completely effortless. It's a mental technique. It's completely effortless and natural. And there are over 10 million people around the world who have learned TM, or transcendental meditation, to date, in almost every country in the world, from every social background, religious background, ethnic background. So no matter what the person lifestyle, TM has been proven to be a very popular technique, but it's also very effective. There are over 450 studies in top scientific journals published in terms of the mind, the body behavior, and even environmental changes that are brought about by practicing TM. So it's been rigorously studied. As I said, I've focused on the scientific research on TM and PTSD, but there's research that shows that TM produces much deeper rest in the deepest point in deep sleep. TM increases intelligence. For students, TM improves grades. Grade points significantly increases. There's a higher rate of graduation for students because the better social behavior, social interactions. For businesses, there's beautiful benefits in terms of reduced sickness time, better cooperativity at work, and better productivity. In terms of general health, there's a beautiful study that was done in Canada. Over millions of people were compared, the TM group and the non-TM group. And there's a dramatic reduction in hospital admissions, which is associated with reduced cost of healthcare and reduced need for healthcare through TM. So TM is a very, very wide range of benefits that's been shown through over 450 or 500 scientifically verified peer-reviewed studies. It's a scientific technique, really, and it's just it's an automatic technique that's effortless. People just have to do it to get the automatic results.
I resonate a lot with the effortless part of what you just said, because over the years, I've got to pick up a lot of techniques and types of meditations, and TM has been perhaps the one that I have sustained, not necessarily out of, some sort of a discipline that I've forced on myself, but just because I could feel what was happening to me, just the creativity and the restfulness that I have been getting out of each session. And And the research on TM, I think, is very interesting too. I think it discloses things about the nature of consciousness that can be helpful for everyone. But so because we mentioned a lot of other types of meditation, what do you think? What are the key characteristics that distinguish TM from other meditations?
Well, the thing is, meditations can mean anything. Meditation can be, some people consider even walking things to be meditation, or concentration or contemplation, where you're focusing on some topic or trying to remember something. TM is absolutely effortless. The mechanics of TM are that the mind is like an ocean. You have the thinking, you're thinking thoughts, which is the surface level of the mind. The thought comes to the mind. But where does the thought come from? So it's like the ocean. You dive into the ocean and you go deeper and deeper. And the deeper you go, the more quiet and silent it gets, until you're at the source. The basis of the ocean is completely quiet and silent. And the mind, in the same way, we're having thoughts all day long of things you want to do, or things that are coming to the awareness. But there's so much of the unconscious there, we don't really know where the thoughts are coming from. So with TM, TM automatically brings the mind to the quieter and quieter levels of the thinking process until you experience the source of thought. So basically, you're uncovering the full range of the mind. The unlimited basis of thinking is that silent basis of the mind. So you're eliminating the unconscious, or subconscious, and you're starting to experience the full range of the mind. And so the goal of TM is not for meditation itself, but to be successful in activity, to have less stress, more effectiveness in activity. And you can see that naturally, if more of the mind is available, then one will have more spontaneous ability to be effective in activity. And when the full range of the mind is available, then one has maximum creativity, maximum effectiveness in activity, which is what we all want to do. We want to be successful and happy in activity. So that's what TM does.
That's a beautiful description. Yeah, go ahead.
It's both effortless, and it achieves the goal of unfolding the full mental potential as a basis for more successful activity. That's what makes a unique practice.
I've been contemplating a lot because I have, over the years, I've been paying attention to what happens to me as I meditate. And, we know that it's not about
transcendental meditation, right?
I practice transcendental meditation. I've been practicing it for 8 years. I learned it right before I was doing my grad studies. I went to grad school, and it has been of so much help in terms of increasing my productivity, in terms of staying present when, quite frankly, the environments must have been quite chaotic, and it has put me on a learning curve. So my capacity to absorb information and take steps there I could speak about this for a long time. I want to share what I think happens as we meditate, and I'm really curious about how you would comment on that as a researcher. The way I've made sense of it is, we do have default innate health, and you talked about it, the nature of consciousness. It's like the deep part of the ocean. And it seems like through TM, as we have this mantra, and because the attention goes to the mantra, it's almost like we take our hands off our repetitive thoughts and all the things that the brain has to do, which almost gives permission for the brain or for the mind to relax into what it already is. Does that sound like an accurate description?
Well, what it is normally you're thinking on you experience it, so you're describing your experience.
Yeah.
Self-validating. But the mechanics that normally without we use a meaningless sound called a mantra, which the sole purpose of the mantra is to bring the awareness. It's a thought that brings the awareness inward to quieter levels of thinking process. So normally you're outward thinking, your attention is outward on thoughts and activities and plans and things like that. The mantra and the method of TM bring the mind inward to the quieter and quieter levels. So you're So it's just it's a different direction of activity. Instead of directed inward, it's activity directed inward. I think that's how we could say what TM does. It brings the mind inward to quieter and quieter levels of its own innate nature.
That's great. Well, one other thing that I really appreciate about TM is that it's not just the kind of the high or the restfulness that you get for 20 minutes. I think it's more about what happens for the rest of your day. And so it
That's
seems
right.
like the research shows that there's some sort of an integration process that happens. Share a little bit more about that.
Yes. Well, with TM, the purpose of TM is to be more dynamic in activity. And you have a balance. You meditate 20 minutes, an adult meditates for 20 minutes, and then you spend 8 hours in activity. And you meditate again at the end of the day, and you have remaining activity and sleep. So the point of TM is to prepare you to live 200% of life, which means more and more the quiet, silent levels of the mind are available until the very basis of complete unlimited silence of activity is available. Silence of the mind is available in activity, so that no matter what you're doing, you have the full capability of the mind available. So TM is a preparation for successful activity. Yeah.
Interesting. Let's talk a little bit about the Armenian context. As I said, not so many people know that TM has been used in Armenia for quite a long time, quite successfully. How was it that TM was originally brought to Armenia?
Well, it's the details. I wasn't there at the time, but the details of the overall picture is really simple. Is that the TM program is both to help the individual, come out of stress, and also to help the individual develop full mental potential, which means inner fulfillment and outer success and activity. But it's also a compassionate organization that cares for the world. It's here to help reduce stress in the individual and the world. And so when there was with the earthquake of 1988, it was brought to the attention of the leaders of the TM movement that there was a huge suffering, a lot of trauma and PTSD, and huge suffering in Armenia. And there was a request by Armenia, by some of the leaders, the governmental leaders in Armenia, for help. So we simply responded to the call, and we sent 10 TM teachers, and then later another 10 or 20 TM teachers. And within 2 years, they taught 30,000 people TM. And the results were rapid and dramatic, because as we experienced with the Congolese war refugees, who were overwhelmed with the stress of the violence and that they'd seen or been subjected to. The same thing, anytime PTSD is post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, can be caused by any number of traumatic events. It can be war violence, it can be sexual abuse, it could be natural disaster like in Armenia. So when there was a call for help, the TM movement raised the money. They went to help those in need, and thousands of people learned. Children who had been under rubble or had seen family members killed, or wives who had lost their mothers, who had lost their children or husbands, were crying without limit. They just couldn't stop. The stress was so great. And after they learned TM, they didn't forget what had happened, but they weren't overwhelmed with the stress of it. They could start living their lives again with the burden of the loss they had. So we were brought there at the request of the great need in nature, the great need of so many people crying out for help, and the government also assisted us. And then people immediately recognized what was going on, and they appreciated it. And the word spread by mouth that this is really helping. This is really helping. So please come, and we want to learn too.
That's beautiful. There's a photo of Armenians meditating together. I don't know exactly which year was that, but I think they were gathering in one of the universities. Yeah, and just watching the faces of people and just seeing people getting together to generate positive consciousness or help just alleviate, transcend their suffering, is just so beautiful and inspiring. And as someone that has actually worked with political affairs and foreign relations, I feel like Armenia is in a situation right now where we need to tap into our own energy and get tools that will allow us to use our creativity a lot more. So it seems like transcendental meditation could be such a tool. Tell us a little bit about the degree to which TM has been integrated in Armenia. And I know you have been advocating for TM, so you talk with different government officials, organizations. What's happening right now?
Yeah, so it turns out that as every Armenian knows, in the fall of 2020, there was another war with Azerbaijan, fairly disastrous war. It created a lot of fear in the country. Obviously, the people in the war zones and the soldiers and the displaced people felt huge amount of stress. We've actually done a video which you can play sometime that shows 15-minute video by award-winning documentary filmmaker Tigran Nersisian, which highlights what happened, discusses TM a little bit, and so you're free to play that if you'd like. But so what happened after the war was in 2020, fall of 2020. In this January of 2021, a message was sent out by the Armenian Ministry of Emergency Situations, calling from psychiatrists around the world. It didn't actually say psychologists and psychiatrists, just said help needed all around the world. Mm-hmm. And they were specifically hunting for psychologists and psychiatrists to help with war trauma and associated mental challenges that arise from war. So we were alerted about that, and since I've done articles on this, I've been focusing on that. I helped write a proposal to the Ministry of Emergency Situations, saying that it's showing the research comparing TM with the top psychological techniques, which are psychiatric techniques, which are called prolonged exposure and cognitive behavior therapy, and we've compared them in research, and we're at least as good, if not significantly better than those procedures. And transcendental meditation is not what's called trauma facing. Trauma facing that you don't have to sit down with a psychologist or psychiatrist or expert and say, let's discuss what happened. We don't need to
right.
Trauma to do TM. It's the opposite. Instead of facing the trauma, dealing with the trauma, remembering the trauma, we forget the trauma. We transcend the trauma. We go to quieter, more and more settled levels of thinking. It's a completely different mechanic of healing. Our mechanic is to go to quieter levels of the thinking process until we go to the quietest level. And because the mind and body are connected, and you get so much deeper level of rest with TM that even deep at point of deep sleep, when we sleep, we get rid of stress and strain. We come out fresher. So when you do TM, we get much deeper level of rest. We get rid of much more stress and fatigue, and we come out. We get rid of the stress and post-traumatic stress of the trauma, and we're freed of that within 15, 20, 30 days for most people. Much of the trauma is gone. And of course, you continue the practice to keep the trauma off, to keep the stress off, and to experience post-traumatic growth. So the point is that with TM, we experience a dramatic reduction in PTSD. So we gave we showed the scientific research to the Ministry of Emergency Situations, and they said, and we actually visited them, and they said, for our project, we only want to support psychologists and psychiatrists, but they sent us a letter. The Ministry of Health wrote a letter that said TM is good for mind and body. So although they didn't support us to actually help in their specific project, they endorsed us to go help all around the country. So then we went to all the provincial governments, and the provincial government said, it's very great, we'll support you to reach out to those in need. So that's how we did this. And then we raised funds from well-wishers around the world to go out and help those in need who needed funding. And we helped hundreds and hundreds of people who are veterans, soldiers, displaced people, and then the general population who are experiencing trauma. So that's what we've done since spring of 2021. We've been reaching out all across the country with the TM teachers to teach and help people with trauma.
It's very interesting what you just mentioned, that TM is not trauma facing, and it resonates a lot with me. And psychology has gone through a lot of changes too. Before the insights of Jung and Freud, people wouldn't even, everything was associated with the brain, and then surely it was the mind. But this approach that we got to go find the wounds and then touch it and then amend it so that we heal them was very common. It seems like psychology is catching up with the insight that may not be so. And I think that transcendental meditation is a great antidote to that. One of my teachers, Sidney Baggsy, he always used to say that the solution is always in a beautiful feeling. So I think one of the advantages of TM is that it can give a direct experience of that bliss consciousness, and then as you're experiencing that, whatever healing needs to happen almost happens. It's almost like you let go, and let
exactly.
some wisdom that is greater than you.
Stress. Not that you don't have the memory, but you don't have the stress. You don't want to be thinking all the time. With PTSD, you always have memories imposing on you. Memory over and over and over again, unstoppably disturbing a person. You don't want that. You want to be able to move forward your life. You don't want to be locked into past unpleasant situations. You want to be able to remember if you need to, but you want to be able to live in the present, live with your current situation, to be loving to your family, to be effective at work, to be happy inside, despite the unfortunate events of the past. So yeah, and TM does produce bliss inside. That's the actual experience of TM. It's a delightful, effortless process that you do TM not because you're required to do it. As you said, you do it because it's a joy to do it. You're drawn to do it. It's like when you listen to a beautiful piece of music that's very refined and charming, you're drawn there. You do it, you like listening to the music because it's enjoyable. TM's the same way. It's like it's a beautiful inner experience that is charming, and the side benefits are that your mind is clear, that your health is better, it's easy to relate with other people. Those are all the side benefits, and that the trauma goes away. If you have trauma, the trauma goes away.
I like that a lot. And it's interesting. To me, TM is both a spiritual tool, but it's a very practical tool too. And a lot of successful organizations have integrated it. Like companies like, I think, Bridgewater Associates, Ray Dalio is a big advocate for that.
Yes.
So share a little bit more how it can be useful in corporate settings or in terms of increasing productivity and this sort of things.
Well, when people, as we said before, when a person meditates and they release stress and strain, then naturally their own internal compass is they're able to relate more effortlessly with other people, more smoothly with other people. The mind becomes clear, and as you experienced when you were in school, you were able to accomplish more as a student. That was your automatic experience by doing TM, that your mind was clear, you could do more. You could understand more, and you could and do more. So the same thing in the workplace. The big challenges in work are not only productivity, but also cooperation between different people. So it's just a natural thing, and many organizations have incorporated TM or made it available to people. It's not a requirement, but they say all those who'd like to learn, you can learn for free. And those organizations have flourished with TM because the people are easier, they get along with each other better, they like being with each other better, they can get more done more efficiently. And as I said, there are a number of scientific studies that have done that show reduced sick time, better cooperativity with supervisors and among supervisors, and better cooperativity among the employees if you have that structure in your corporation. So productivity is up, health problems are down, and so that's what happens when a corporation practices TM.
As I mentioned already, I think it's also very interesting what research on TM and a lot of other things reveal about the nature of the mind and the nature of the consciousness. It seems to me that we have some sort of a self-correcting mechanism, and people have different words for it. People have different ways of describing it. But it seems like what TM does, it allows that mechanism to kind of work more effectively. It's not making it work, it's perhaps giving it space to work. It's almost like if I drop something, it's just gonna fall away because there's gravity, right? And in nature there's something similar, which is our inclination to go to peace or to this quiet state. So speak a little bit about what research has revealed that could be helpful even to people that don't meditate and are listening to us right now.
Well, before I talk about the research, I just like to say that human beings are adaptable to each other and flexible, and naturally want to work together. Your question is about cooperativity?
You can speak about that too. No, my question was more about the nature of the mind or the nature of the consciousness, and like TM being a catalyst for something to happen that almost wants to happen, but we almost don't let it happen because we think all the time and we project our thoughts to the world. But with TM, we kind of take a break. So thoughts have a capacity to somehow settle down on their own. It's just we almost give them permission to do that. So and again, this is maybe a very subjective.
You're actually talking about a few things at the same time.
Yeah.
Really to it is to adapt to the moment, to seize the opportunity, to seize the day. To recognize an opportunity and to take advantage of it, to have that ability. Is that what you're talking about?
No, but that's a really lovely topic to please comment on that. I think well, what you just said and what I think I said, I think they are inherently connected, because if you're not present, if you're not allowing new thought, you're not seeing what's happening, you're not going to be able to seize any opportunity. So it's right. Connected to what I said.
So the point is that the more of the with TM, you're unfolding the full conscious capacity of the mind. So every new opportunity, every new relationship, all that's happening, the more clear the mind is, the more, if you're using 50% of the mind, then all the different thinking and different opportunities, you have so much more capacity. Normally, we're told to use maybe 10, 15% of the mind. So if you have 50% of the mind available, which has been developed through so much time of doing transcendental meditation, and how much more ability will you be to recognize opportunities and seize on it? Or if you have 90% of the mind available, how much more ability there'll be to see new opportunities and act upon them? You have 100%, that means all the things that are coming across you that seem to be evolutionary, seem to be good for you or your colleagues, you'll be able to pick up on it and act upon it. So the research on TM that shows self-actualization, that shows greater intelligence, greater creativity, greater intelligence, better ability to have sharp focus and broad awareness at the same time, all those studies on the mind, which there are many of them, show basic and even greater brain coherence, which means the different parts of the brain are functioning together instead of variety of thoughts coming at you and you being a little bit incoherent. The mind becomes clearer and clearer and functions as a whole very simply and clearly. So all those studies show what the inner experience is, that there's more silence, there's more clarity, clear thinking, more intelligence, and you pick up those opportunities that come more easily because one sees more of what's going on.
That's beautiful. Another thing that's very fascinating to me is how meditating, especially collective meditations, the effect that these can have on people that don't meditate. And I know there have been studies in DC, Beirut, and Palestine So basically, part of the population meditates together, taps into this blissful state, and then you can track positive changes for the whole society. Share a little bit more
Yeah,
about
so
that.
this is actually extremely important because the two aspects of what we're doing with Alliance for PTSD Recovery, one is to reduce the trauma and PTSD from people who have gotten traumatized or have PTSD. And we've seen the mechanics of TM are very simple. We've explained how that reduces very, very deep stress and very, very deep traumatic stress. And the research shows very clearly that it's rapidly brings people back to a normal life. From PTSD can be a chronic, lifelong problem. It can be something that lasts an entire lifetime. We know veterans from United States veterans from Vietnam, which happened in the 1960s, who still have PTSD 60, 70, 50, 60, 70 years later. So without the proper support, one can spend one whole life with PTSD and trauma. And so this is what we're focusing on as one of our components. The other extremely important component of reason that we're working on and a very valuable part of the TM program is that there are 35 studies, not 50, there are 35 published scientific studies that show that there's a effect of a small group practicing Transcendental Meditation and its advanced programs together in a group has an effect on reducing stress, violence, the negative factors, including even war and violence on the whole society. The formula is square root of 1% of the people practicing the TM and its advanced programs called the TM City program together in one place. So for the United States, that's about 2,000 people. For Armenia, the factor is about 200 people. We like to have a safety factor of 200 more, so we're trying to form a group of 400 people. But that's a dramatic reduction in the negative factors and increase in social harmony and increase in economic well-being and productivity when just a small group is doing this practicing together at the same time. So it's a very advanced technology to help the nation or to even help the world. The world's population, the square root of 1% of the world population is about 8,000 or 9,000 now. So if there was a group of 8,000 or 9,000 or a couple groups of 8,000 or 9,000, then there would be, according to this research on these studies we have so far, a significant reduction in violence and war, and an increase in the positive outcomes of economic productivity for the world's population.
That's so interesting.
Armenia,
yeah, go ahead.
Now that Armenia is in such a dire strait with Azerbaijan, we feel we're specifically going right now to try to meet with schools in particular, but other organizations as well that can set up a routine of meditating twice a day for 20, 30 minutes and creating peace for the nation. So this is basically, from my perspective, this is the highest level of patriotism to prevent the war, to prevent the violence, to prevent the trauma by dedicating a few minutes twice a day in a group to help the nation.
Let's speak a little bit about why that happens, because people might be very skeptical. Could we somehow theorize that, well, there is collective consciousness and our individual consciousnesses are part of it, and as we elevate it, because things are interconnected, it does influence the general vibe? What has research dived into why that might be the case?
Yeah, I'm not a physicist, so I can't go into all the mechanics of how this works. You know, there's a theoretical understanding of consciousness as a field. There's a theoretical understanding that the unified field, the basis of mind, the basis of all levels of creation, is consciousness, or that field has a quality of consciousness. and we tap into that unified field, and we enliven that the harmonious value of that field for for whatever size group is meditating. But the point is, I'm not a theoretical physicist to give all the clear explanation of that. But we know from the results that it is producing a result for the square to 1% of the population if they're with regular practice. There was a recent study for the United States when there was a large group in Fairfield, Iowa, that of the square to 1% of the population of the United States, and there was a corresponding reduction in many of the negative social indicators, violence, murder, accident rates, and so forth went down correspondingly, and there were positive indicators of economic growth during that time. And there are 35 other studies that show the similar thing. So it's a scientific principle that's been well validated through research. And look at the other side. Even if all those studies weren't true, what's the downside for the group doing it and trying it for Armenia? You know, there's no downside because all you do is get personal benefits and the very great likelihood of creating improved peace and coherence for your nation. So I think it's a great thing for Armenia for patriotic reasons to give it a try for a year and see what happens to your nation.
That's interesting. In terms of the research on it, one person that I've been reading and watching the materials of Dr. John Hagelin, and I think he explains it in very great detail. If somebody's listening to us right now and would like to research it, just type Dr. John Hagelin. I think you'll find a lot. I want to play the devil's. I'm converted. I've seen the effects of TM on me. I want to see a group, and as you've mentioned, we are in a dire state, and we need something brand new. And this could be one of these things. I'm curious because this is what's referred to as the Maharishi effect after Maharishi. Is that true?
Yes, the founder of the TM program is Maharishi Mahesh Yogi.
Yes.
Honor him for he provided this technique which has this effect. So it's like, there are many negative health conditions that we name after the person who discovered them. This positive effect, which we're naming it the founder of the TM program for his positive influence on the individual and society. So it's called the super radiance effect or the Maharishi effect. Yeah.
I love that. So my question is, especially if the research confirms this, why do you think the world perhaps has picked up on this because there are different studies and attempts in different parts of the world, but why hasn't the world picked this up to a degree that would have eliminated the kind of violence that we're witnessing today?
The thing is, there could be many, many reasons. People are very distracted with all their problems. I think the main thing is that people are so distracted with their problems and that it's they're trying diplomacy, they're trying war, they're trying to solve their problems. And this is something new. And when there's a new paradigm, it takes a while for it to be accepted. So I think it's just a question of time. It's whenever there's anything new, it takes a while for people to pick it up and make it popular. I think it's just a matter of time. And since it clearly works, and soon enough, it'll be picked up, and then everyone will say, well, it was obvious from the beginning that we should be doing this. So for right now, we're at the phase of implementation of a new paradigm shift technology that we just go ahead and present it, and then over time, it'll be picked up and used.
That's a great answer. And we have, I think all paradigm shifts have gone through a similar, like, for example, discovering that the Earth goes around the sun and not the other way around. I mean, it has always been true. It's just because we can think whatever we want and our thoughts are going to self-actualize and we're going to see proof to whatever we think. We're just going to create stories and then relate to the truth through those stories. But I think the good thing with tools such as Transcendental Meditation is that it exactly puts you on a receptive state where you can appreciate a lot more about other parts of life that would be very useful.
That's right.
That at least, yeah.
As we said, when more every day, more and more of the full mental potential is being unfolded through TM, to the regular practice, there's naturally more receptivity all the time to what's new and progressive and good. So that's what happens with TM. Yeah.
I love that. David, is there any other question that you wish I had asked?
No, I think we've touched. We're here to help Armenia, and we're here to help. And the TM program is available in almost every country on earth. So we're here to provide support. If people want to know more, they can go to our website. There are several websites that are good. One is to know more about PTSD and trauma, both research and experiences from people. It's Alliance for PTSD Recovery, PTSDR.org. That way you can see more research. Or if you want to see general things on TM, you can go to the tm.org site in English, which provides beautiful research on a wide variety of things. There's a TM site in Armenia. I don't know you'll have to put in the
yeah, I'm gonna include the links. I think the Armenian site is armenia.tm.org.
So we appreciate, we strongly encourage anyone interested in self-improvement, trauma reduction, or just general improvement in all areas of life to learn TM. And the true patriots of every nation should form the groups best in a university setting, or not best in a school situation where people can easily incorporate it in their lives, for the sake of protecting peace and progress in the nation, in every nation, especially in a time now when there are even nuclear risks. It's particularly important to create peace in the world, to reduce that even the thought in people's minds of such destructive possibilities. So it's great patriotism for the world and protection for the human race to incorporate something like TM, to create Transcendental Meditation as group practice for the individual growth and for the protection of peace in the nation. Thank you so much for inviting me to speak with you. It's been a great joy.
Oh, thank you so much. If you don't mind, I want to ask you one last question.
Sure.
Well, okay, two more questions. How old were you when you learned TM?
I was 1975, so I was 23 when I learned TM. Okay,
beautiful. So let's transcend TM as well. Forget about Transcendental Meditation for just a second. Imagine if you're speaking with the 23-year-old version of David, and now you've discovered a completely different world, including with the help of TM. What's your message to David?
The question was a little unclear because...
Okay, if you could share any piece of advice or a message to that version of David that hasn't yet discovered TM and is still kind of trying to figure it out.
Oh yeah, well, the thing is that the purpose of life is to unfold full potential, so that there's no stress in the nervous system and one can do everything one wants. And so when one has the opportunity to get a technology that effortlessly does that, it's the greatest gem, the greatest possibility in one's life. Seize it and use it. That's my recommendation to 22-year-old David.
22. Excellent. Thank you for that.
Sure.
It's been a pleasure talking with you, David.
Thank you very much.